Today I'm talking with Tanya Fitzgerald, mentor at Mentors for Women and a finance leader who has spent her career in rooms where the numbers carry the weight, but the people make the difference. Tanya started in finance at 17. By 20, she was managing a team. Since then, she has run her own company, taken a manufacturing business from £1 million to £18 million in turnover, and become the first non-partner to sit in the management board at Albert Goodman, a firm of accountants with around 350 staff across Southwest. An early mentor taught Tanya that numbers tell a story. That idea runs through everything she does, from how she reads a balance sheet and how she leads a team through change. If you're seeking a mentor, reach out to Mentors for Women to explore working with Tanya or another vetted mentor from our global community. You'll be matched with the right mentor for leadership, career, life transition, creativity, or business growth. Anya, you started working in finance at 17 at the Yorkshire Water Authority, and you have said that your first line managers mentoring gave you skills and confidence you have built on ever since. What was it about that mentoring relationship that made such a difference so early on?
I think because I didn't know what to expect, obviously being really quite young at 17, and it was my first job. So I wasn't really sure what to expect. So I went in quite naively. However, I was very, very lucky in that my direct manager became more than just a manager. She became a mentor and a friend. And she took such real interest in me and what I was doing and how I was learning, and really gave me the guidance and support to help me make constructive decisions. I felt totally supported by her. I felt that I could ask her any number of questions, for example. Often at that stage, they were the same questions that I'd just forgotten the answers to or whatever. But she showed great empathy and patience and encouragement. And I do believe that's why, even at such an early age, I did gain in confidence, and that enabled me to find the confidence to actually then, after 18 months, apply for promotion to the Yorkshire Water Authority Billing Department. And then latterly, after another 8-9 months, I was encouraged to then apply for a very different role where I was in fact taking on a leadership role.
Within 3 years of starting that first job, you were managing a credit control team of 10 people. That's a lot of responsibility. So, what did you learn about leadership from given that responsibility? You said that you already felt confident, but specifically, was there something that you might not felt fully ready for? So, how did you manage that situation for yourself?
Yeah, no, good question. And most definitely, it was a huge step change for me, and still being relatively young at 20. And I think the other dynamic was the team was completely female, and many of those females were older than I was, and some of them had worked for the authority for quite some years. However, I had been encouraged to take the role or apply for the role, and then I was interviewed and was appointed in the role, again by a combination of things. So my first manager from when I was 17, as I mentioned, had by this stage continued to be a feature of my life. We both still worked for the Yorkshire Water Authority, albeit in different teams and different departments by that point. But she continued to encourage me. So when I felt that perhaps it was a step too much, she talked to me about all the reasons why she felt I was ready for the challenge, and what attributes I had within me to help me take on such a role. And my direct manager in the other department at the time sort of echoed that sentiment. So yes, of course, there was a huge nervousness around actually stepping into the role, but quite quickly what I did was actually I just kind of quite naturally. And I think sometimes there are certain elements of leadership that are quite a natural element. And I think that comes down to being emotionally intelligent, having empathy, and more than anything else, having really good communication skills. So certainly what I did to try and get all of the people on side, because as you can imagine, there was some skepticism among some of the team, was I actually just talked to them, and I talked to them about my strategy for developing the department. I talked to them about the issues that I could see that we needed to try and work out. But I also reinforced the message that this wasn't just me, that we were a team, and I needed them to help me to help deliver the goals that the business needed from us. So I think from using that approach, quickly my age became more irrelevant. It was more about my capability, more about involving others in decision making, and all about just moving forward and just having an open door policy. But probably most important of all for some of the team members, given the age difference, was actually showing them that I wasn't afraid to get down and do the hard work as well. And I was reliant upon their knowledge and history, having done the job for such a long time. So just pulling it all together and creating the team dynamic and getting rid of the hierarchical stigma, I suppose, that was really quite prevalent, especially in the 70s and early 80s.
What I loved about that was that you stepped in very transparently, sharing your thoughts and not trying to force yourself to be something else that you were at the time. You were
Yeah.
very honest about yourself and self-aware about where you are and how you want to work. But also, it sounds like such a good people environment. You had more than one person to support you there. So
Mm-hmm.
sounds great.
And certainly I think that is the most important thing of all. I think throughout one's career journey, it's all about having the right sort of support mechanism in place and not one size fits all. It could be that you need somebody that can certainly help you develop on the technical side of the job, dependent upon obviously what that role might be, but also the ongoing continued support in stretching you and developing you, but also reassuring you that some of the decisions that you're making are good and sound, but also having somebody to feed those ideas back to and from is really quite key. It comes down bottom line communication. I think that really is at the root core of all of it.
You then moved to London to work for a US owned franchise where a
Yeah.
finance director you respected taught you that numbers tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
How has that idea shaped the way you work and the way you lead?
So again, I've been really quite fortunate in my career in that I've worked with some incredibly good people who enjoyed teaching me and enjoyed sharing their experiences with me and opening my mind to looking at things from different perspectives sometimes. So I think that really has helped stand me in good stead. And certainly the idea that the numbers on a balance sheet or profit and loss account or whatever in my industry tell a story, that just brought the whole thing to life for me. And that's something that I've carried throughout my journey. And it's something that I've always shared with my teams and my colleagues to get them to understand things slightly differently. And so, for example, in that particular business, the franchise organisation, part of my role was to actually teach the franchise owners how to maintain their own accounting records. And so explaining to them what story the numbers are telling and why it's so important to understand the story that they are telling us just became part of my everyday existence, really. And of course, when you are perhaps delivering more uncomfortable news, perhaps the numbers are showing you that actually things aren't going as well as they'd hoped or that they actually thought they were, then that's when the empathy comes into play and knowing how to communicate rather difficult messages sometimes in the best possible manner. So again, that's all part of the storytelling in my mind.
In the 1980s, you set up your own limited company and provided accounting services to all sorts of businesses, from a 300-person model recruitment agency to a deli on Clapham High Street.
Mhm.
What did running your own company teach you that being employed never could?
Well, first of all, that not having a guaranteed monthly income certainly focuses the mind. And um, in reality, I personally believe that whether it's your business or you're working somebody else's business, then the core values remain the same. Because, for example, in my role now at Albert Goodman, I'm the finance director, which means that the partners and the firm is my client, essentially. And what I did learn from running my own business was the fact that you really do have to develop the ability to make decisions, stand by your decisions. Sometimes those decisions might not be 100% correct, but then looking and understanding how you can actually improve on that and actually learn from the decision and change the outcome if necessary. Again, communication skills are incredibly important. You need to engage with your client as well as colleagues at all times to make sure there are no nasty surprises or hidden shocks. Um, but yeah, it was very, very different running my own business. I've always given 110%, whatever I've applied myself to. That was no different. I suppose perhaps I gave 150% sometimes. But for me at that time, and in that time of my development, I was mid-20s by then, and living in London, having moved down from Yorkshire, it was really, really exciting time to be in London. And it was a time when there was lots of growth in the economy. So that's how I got involved in so many different types of businesses. It happened quite organically. I was actually employed at the time, that other people that I knew came to me and actually asked me to help them set up their own accounting records or cash flows or getting funding from banking or whatever it might be, which then led naturally to me sort of seeing that as an opportunity for my own personal satisfaction and development and growth. So yes, I enjoyed that hugely. But yeah, again, all part of the learning curve. And again, just the opportunity to work with lots of different types of people in lots of different types of business environments gave me a breadth of knowledge and understanding that I probably wouldn't have got anywhere else at that time.
I'm curious about the entrepreneurship expanding your freedoms, time, money, creativity, or how you express yourself, but also the relationship. So did you choose different kind of clients or people that you worked with when you had your own business compared to the positions that you held in other companies?
So it happened quite organically. As I say, it was a time of growth. So the first company that I was asked to work with was a design company, and I actually rented some space from them. And then really it was just getting to know different people and then friends or friends of friends who were setting up in business or their business was growing, where I was getting references from all sorts of people. So it just started to happen organically, and working closely with banks, organising funding for people. That also gave me a different dynamic in that then I found that bank managers and relationship managers that I was working with, they would then come across clients of theirs that they felt would benefit from having somebody like me with my experience helping them set up or grow their businesses. It all kind of just happened. It was so much easier then, though, as I say, in the mid-80s when, the economy was good and there were lots of new businesses, and certainly being in London, that helped enormously.
I call them dinner table connections, so that friends get you, because then there's
Yeah,
some similar type of value base or something. So it's easier to manage the relationship with the new clients. But it also sounded
exactly.
that was a time of discovery as well. You found new opportunities, or they found you.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yes, it was definitely that.
Later, you joined a manufacturing startup as financial controller, and the role grew into something much bigger. You
Yes.
ended up as a director running finance, HR,
Hmm. Hmm.
marketing, and operations. while the business grew from 1
Yeah.
million pounds to 18 million pounds.
Hmm.
What did managing that kind of growth demand from you?
Steady nerve, the ability to drink gin and still get up for it the next morning. Um, no, seriously, it was an opportunity that came about. By this time, my husband and I had moved to the southwest of England, where I live currently. And I'd been working on a part-time basis because we'd started a family by this point. I was working on a part-time basis, and that company was actually relocating to somewhere that didn't suit me. So I applied for a role that had been recently advertised to join a manufacturing company. And what had happened quite simply was the owner of the company had bought an established business that was based in the Midlands. When he bought it, it was turning over £1 million a year. So it already had a foundation to it. The chap that bought it, he understood the product. Also, he came from a very strong marketing background. So he was familiar with those two strands of running a business. But other than that, he'd never actually run his own business. So his accountant advertised for the financial controller role on the basis that he recognised that that had to be the starting point, somebody to come in and look after the finances and help grow that. And I was given that opportunity really very quickly. I then, as I do, started to fill the gaps for other things that hadn't perhaps been considered. So, for example, we were recruiting people, we were transferring the business from the Midlands to the Southwest. So obviously there were people issues there. And so I started to get involved in looking after the people side of it, as well as the financial side of it. The marketing side of it, I touched on very lightly, but certainly the operational side. So that meant the facility side, making sure that we had the right systems in place, making sure that we had the right people in place, making sure that we had enough space available to us and enough people available to us, given the exponential growth. The first couple of years, we sort of started to grow the business at a solid pace, but it was after probably about 3 years that we started to see more exponential growth. And that really was as a result of improved marketing and increasing the product range. So it started to develop a whole sort of new momentum. In terms of what were the problems with that, well, one, making sure we had enough money for the working capital requirement. B, we imported a lot of the product, so there was the currency exchange scenario that needed managing because we were dealing in American dollars. Making sure we had the right people, because again, for a business that starts to grow at that rate, you need people that are actual doers and can actually make a contribution very early on. And to make sure that we had the right processes in place, and then ultimately that we had enough people and enough storage space to actually accommodate the growth. And that was such an exciting time, but certainly it was incredibly demanding and worrying, because as some businesses obviously have difficulties when perhaps business starts to stall and they start to sort of see a decrease in their business. They have to accommodate those changes. You have exactly the same but opposite problem when a business is growing very quickly. So trying to stay one step ahead of the game. So it's all about making sure that you're very clear on your strategy, that everybody from each team is bought into that strategy, and that you're working together to achieve that common goal.
You said some was times that were very exciting, but also worrying. So they don't
Yeah,
exclude each other. You can
no,
have both.
yes, exactly right, exactly right. I mean, it was exciting, the fact that the business was starting to grow in turnover, grow in reputation. We were getting really good press. Banks were impressed by us. Our suppliers were incredibly keen to do even more business with us. So there were all those, and people were wishing to join the business, whether it be in the admin side, the design side, the product side, or the operational side, which was managing the warehouse operations. So that was a really good energy to be around. But absolutely, it was also incredibly challenging trying to make sure that we weren't overcommitting in terms of funding, for example, making sure that the balance sheet balanced, making sure that we were as in control of it as we reasonably could be. And again, that all comes down to communication, strategy, looking forward, and doing the what ifs. So trying to prepare yourself as much as possible for the what if suddenly we have excess demand and we don't have enough stock. What if we don't have enough people in the warehouse to actually maintain the good delivery levels that we were enjoying? That was part of the success. The fact that somebody would place an order and within a day the order would be delivered unless they lived in an outlying part of the country. So yes, there were challenges on both sides, but it was great to be part of something that did grow well.
You mentioned about there being the same issues or same things to handle or address, whether the business goes up in growth or down.
Mm-hmm.
Would there be something you could say to people, whether the business is growing strongly or they're seeing the opposite happening, that would help them how to focus? You said that strategy needs to be extremely clear. Would you have some advice for people in that situation, growth
Yeah.
situation, whether it's up or down?
I think the most important thing to do is to get advice and support. What I have seen over the years is a lot of people perhaps try to ignore what's happening, and therefore they might put themselves, or they run the risk of putting themselves in a position, or the business in a position where it's harder to actually manage a situation, because as soon as you're having to react to something as opposed to plan for it, or certainly plan as best you can for it, that's when the challenge really, really does hit. That's when the stress levels go up. And the more stressful the situation, the more likely you are to make mistakes and not make considered decisions that could actually help the business benefit from. So it really is a question of making sure that you're getting the right guidance and support, being very open about the situation, and trying to mitigate whether or not it's running out of space or actually having to reduce the space because you need to reduce costs, for example.
Goodman, you became the first non partner to sit on the management board.
Mm-hmm.
What does it take to earn influence in a room where you are the only person who is not a partner?
Yes, that I was very, very pleased and really grateful for the opportunity. Certainly, they'd never, in their long established foundation, had a non partner member on the management board. The reason that I was actually brought into the business initially was that one of the partners had overseen the finance function, the internal finance function. The business was looking to grow, and again, they recognised the fact that they're brilliant at what they do. They're brilliant at giving individual and independent advice to their client base. But sometimes you actually have to try and be introspective and reflect on what's actually happening within your own business. Sometimes that's not quite as easy to do. A lot of the partners have been working for the firm for quite a number of years. What I was offering was somebody with obviously the financial skills and acumen and awareness, but also more commercial awareness of running my own business, but also having worked with lots of different businesses, being able to look at Albert Goodman as my client and looking at perhaps what we needed to improve and what we could do, and also strategically, just based on my broad experience, I was able to bring a different perspective and a different dynamic to the management board from, say, another typical accountant. So it was a different perspective. I was really, really very impressed that they recognised that and they invited me to join. I was a member of the management board for 6 years until last year, because the business has grown substantially over the last 8 years that I've been here, not down to me, but over that period of time, certainly it has grown and changed. So we now have a strategic board, which is made up of equity partners, and an operations board. And I'm a member of the operations board. So looking at the day-to-day mechanics of running the business, influencing the strategic board decisions, but also taking what the strategic board wants in terms of the overall strategy and making sure that it happens. That has been a lovely dynamic, different dynamic to my role, which I've enjoyed immeasurably. It was really interesting being part of that board, helping to make strategic decisions for the business as it continued to grow.
You talk about using soft skills to lead business change. In finance, where people expect hard data and certainty,
Yeah.
how do you bring the human side into the conversations without losing credibility?
You're absolutely right. Yes, numbers are hard facts, but soft skills are so important, incredibly important when delivering the message and working with clients. It's very important in terms of soft skills to have the emotional intelligence to be able to read the room, to be able to present to the client in the best way that they're going to receive it. We've got something like 6,000 clients. So, of course, in amongst them, we've got all sorts of different types of people. We've got sort of the down-to-earth farmer who just wants it straight. Just tell me what I need to know, and that's all I need to know. I don't want to know all the other bits around it. And then we have other clients who want the detail. And it really is important that you understand how to negotiate the difference between those two. Those are very broad extremes, but in between, there are so many different variables. Being able to communicate, having the emotional intelligence to be able to read the room and communicate in the best way. Also, knowing when to listen and to really take on board what the client or whoever it is that you're speaking with, a member of your team, for example, learning how to listen and hear what is being said and making sure that you then respond appropriately. Always having a listening ear, being able to make a decision, and also getting the best out of people. Those are all of the soft skills that are really so important, whatever type of business you're in. But certainly when you are delivering hard facts to customers, and again, it might be that the news isn't what they were hoping to hear. So it's all about having the ability to communicate that in the right way and also offer some guidance and support in actually trying to overcome whatever the issues might be.
Based on what you said, it doesn't sound like you could ever lose credibility using soft skills. I think they are core skills, not soft skills. But it requires that level of awareness that you implement those core skills properly with whatever is happening in the situation, but also that it sits well with the personality and needs of the other person.
Exactly that.
You already mentored colleagues at Albert Goodman, and the feedback has been very positive.
Yeah.
What made you want to extend that mentoring to mentors for women? And what do you find people are really looking for when they sit down with a mentor?
Mm-hmm. Why am I looking to expand into mentors for women? A, because I absolutely believe 110% in what mentors for women are looking to offer women. I think it's a brilliant initiative. I'm very lucky in that the firm that I work with, Albert Goodman, for the last 5 years, we've had a mentorship program. But the more I talk to people, the more I learn just how really relatively unique that is. And certainly in the professional services, we are one of only a very few firms of accountants that actually invest in our people to the extent that we provide this level of support and development. I've seen firsthand what it has done for the women that I've worked with in this business. And over the last 5 years, we limit it to 2 mentors, obviously because it'd be too much of a distraction from the day job. And I'm now on to my third grouping of 2 individual females that I'm working with. What are they looking for? It's usually at a stage of their career where they're looking to progress, but perhaps they're not too clear or too confident about what steps they should be taking to actually help achieve that. Sometimes it might be, if they are at a manager level, that they've got a certain issue that they want to have some help dealing with. But it's more than as with coaching, you have a problem and you just come up with a solution. With mentoring, it's more about why are we choosing that approach? What is the best approach? What suits you best and what suits the receptor best? It's much broader than just direct coaching, and it works incredibly well. I'm really delighted to say that one of the mentees that I worked with, when I first started working with her, I knew she had all of the ability to go as far as she wanted to in the business, in the industry, but she just had very little self-confidence. She couldn't see all of the really great things I could see in her and others could see in her. But because she couldn't see it, the way that she projected herself didn't help, because perhaps she talked too much or she came across too loudly or a little bit too brusque. We stripped all that back, and just by helping her acknowledge the fact she has the answers, she knows what she's talking about, she absolutely is good enough to get on the partnership trail, because that's what she was looking to do. Now she really is very much on that trajectory. That has been fantastic for me, but especially for her. And again, because I've been lucky enough to have such a varied career, I've had lots and lots of experience. I personally have benefited from having the best mentors, certainly one that has stayed with me from the age of 17 to the age of 66. I still speak with my mentor, I still work with my mentor. And you're not going to be surprised when I actually reveal who that person might be. But alongside of that, the idea of mentors for women, I'm finding it so exciting. I'm at the stage of my career now where I just want to give back. I've experienced so much. I mean, what a shame just to then retire, close down and take that with me. I want to share as much as I can whilst I possibly can. I'll do that through whichever avenue I can. So I've got the formal mentor training program at work. I informally mentor, I like to think I do, all of my colleagues that I work with on a day-to-day and ongoing basis. And then alongside of that, this vehicle to actually reach more women in a broader business universe, as it were. I think it's exciting beyond belief, and I am so grateful to have this opportunity.
Just seeing you sharing about you mentoring people, seeing your energy, hearing your
I love it.
energy, it's
I
clear that you love it. You love
really
it.
do. I really do. I really do. Yes. Yes. I feel older obviously has its downsides, but the beauty of it is we have so much knowledge, and to share that with people and just help people get the confidence or get the skills to actually achieve what they want to is a gift in itself.
What a blessing that you decided to be one of the mentors and mentors for women. So that's wonderful for us and people that can get you as a mentor through Mentors for Women. Tanya, what is the one thing you would want a woman listening to remember?
Glass ceilings are of our making as much as they are of anybody else's. If you have a passion and you want to achieve something, there is nothing that will stop you from doing that except yourself. Believe in yourself, reach out, get help, and you can achieve whatever you want to do.
Thank you for that very encouraging one message to remember. Thank you, Tanya. It has been absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you.
And mine. Thank you so much for the opportunity. But I'd also just like to close by the big reveal, and I'm sure this was not going to come as too much of a surprise, but the lady that I've had in my life since I was 17 years old that has helped me get to where I am is Diane Faban.
I could have guessed that.
Yeah, no big reveal, really.
Two absolutely wonderful ladies. So much of wisdom and so much of drive to help others and loving doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Tanya.
My pleasure.